What's up, Liron here. Thank you for joining me on the second episode of my podcast. I'm super excited because this is really something new for me that I'm testing out, and I really hope you enjoyed the first episode. And in this one, I want to talk about making money and art. And because this is still new for me and I still feel this out and understand what I enjoy talking about and how I enjoy talking about the things I talk about, I want this to be as free flow as possible, okay? So I cannot guarantee a good structure, necessarily a good flow in this episode, but what I can guarantee is an interesting conversation, okay? And I do want to make this a conversation, so I will raise a lot of issues and things that I see that I want to talk about that I don't think are discussed this much, and I will encourage you to let me know what you think about these. Before we get started, I just want to remind you that everything we talk about here is going to be in the show notes, which are on my website. So this episode 2, will be under lironyan.com/EP2. Okay, so that's LIRONYAN.com/EP2. The show notes should have everything from a conclusion of what we talked about and the artists that I will present to you, and links and useful information and additional things. So be sure to check that out. Okay, so today what we're going to talk about is art, money, sales, business, a lot of things that artists basically fear. Okay. Now, as for the structure, we're going to have a free flow segment where I'll just freely talk about all of these things. Then we're going to talk a bit we'll get a bit focused and talk about what we can do with this information. Then I'll present to you today's artist, and then we will wrap up this episode. Okay, so let's get started. So first off, I want to talk about artists versus business people. And this is something that for the longest time, I didn't even pay attention to, and I didn't really think about it because these two ideas were so mixed up in my head, and it really goes to show about the type of person I am. But the more I got to learn and meet a lot of artists and colleagues, the more I understood how a lot of artists have this, they dislike anything that has to do with actually building an infrastructure that will support them financially, aka selling and marketing and putting their work out there, and even connection building and networking. Granted, some artists are great specifically at networking and they have really kind of explosive personalities, but a lot of people I know from the different fields of art sometimes have an introverted personality, and that introverted personality is not a reason not to create connections, meaning you can do it your way. And this is something I will definitely talk about in a future podcast, because I think there can be a lot of extrovert traits in an introvert person as well, and you don't have to. You can stay authentic to yourself, but still build these connections. But basically, what I noticed is that a lot of artists have problems like mental blocks when it comes to really pulling themselves together and either building a system that brings revenue, for example, selling their work, whether it be the artwork itself or additional services that relate to art, meaning teaching art, licensing their art, and things like this. And even at the most basic level, I think just charging for their art, meaning how much do I ask for my work, and this is something that I only recently started really selling my paintings. And so I found myself in that dilemma a few times in the past, because whenever someone would ask me how much would a specific painting go for, or if they want something made for them, how much it will go for, and many times I'm like, wow, I never thought of that. And a lot of people really, really kind of lowball themselves, I guess, and really place prices that are a bit low out of fear, or maybe not understanding the value of art and how subjective it is. Because if you go to a museum and you'll check out, or even just do some internet research, you'll find that a lot of art pieces sell for such a high price, and technically speaking, they can be very simple. Now, not to say there wasn't any thought put into them, and I'm really getting more into learning about abstract styles and how much thought does go into them, even if the application seems simple or simplistic. But still, you'll notice how artwork is sometimes priced really disproportionately to the skill that was required necessarily to make it. Okay, so there isn't necessarily a connection between the two, and a lot of this is really subjective. It's a combination of subjective and market and the specific niche you're in and the type of art you do. But I just found personally that a lot of artists price their work really low. Significantly lower than they should. So anyway, this is about like the fear of putting a value or a price tag on your art and maybe feeling like you don't deserve that. And this is something I had to work on a lot, and I still feel like in many cases there is still some disconnect. Meaning, I know on a logical level that my art has a value of X, but then when I want to price it, it's hard not to put Y. It can be more, it can be less. It really depends on the instance or the particular case. But for me, I feel like only recently I started to really understand that my art is much more valuable, and it's definitely going to be priced accordingly really soon in the following months. I'm going to do a lot of things in that field, create actually paintings that are meant just for selling them, working on really getting them in a position to sell for a much higher price than what most people sell their work for. So anyway, this is when talking about pricing and selling your art. There's another aspect of selling yourself, meaning putting yourself out there and really building this base or following. And I find that a lot of people that are kind of more business oriented are very different from artists, and a lot of business oriented people. I see occasionally someone who's clearly more business oriented than art, and they usually they don't necessarily have a lot of value to give in many cases if they're trying to go for the art thing. But they do know how to put themselves out there, and this is also one kind of disconnect. And I think it's very rare to find someone who's both artistic and entrepreneurial. I don't know exactly where I put myself on the entrepreneurial scale, but I will say this. I do feel like I have a strong drive in that sense, and it's really important for me to work for myself, to create my own products, and to sell them. And this is something that, if I look at my past with art, I did put a lot of emphasis in it. And so I'm really curious as to where other people stand on this issue, because a lot of the artists I meet just don't have that in them. They're creators, and that's fine. That's great. If someone's a pure creator, I think they should go for it and really try and create more and maybe get a business partner. I really think at this point it's really important to be honest with yourself, I guess. And so I think if someone is really, really not doesn't care about business, doesn't want to care about business, doesn't want to do the business side and anything, just wants to create, I think that's great. I think these kinds of people really could use a partner. For me, I feel like I can kind of fill in both of these spots. But it's really interesting. It's just an interesting thing to think about. And I really try to, every few months, really reflect on my work and think about how efficient I was, both in improving and growing as an artist and in my business itself. There's one thing I want to touch upon, and that's leveraging your time and building systems. So one of the first things I did when I decided I want to make this basically my career, art, is I wanted to detach my time from my income. And this is something that can be fairly hard to do in many cases. For me, I knew that I have a talent and a knack for teaching. And so I just decided, and I talked about it in the previous episode a bit as well. So I just decided to pour everything I know in one specific topic into a book and self-publish it. And it really worked because I think the timing was great. Books on Amazon was booming, and especially indie publishing started just doing better. And because I published all of my books independently, for the most part, then I got a good timing on it, and I did a good job with the research of seeing actually what types of topics have more demand for, which is a really business-like thing to do and not an artistic thing to do. A lot of artists are very, set on what they want to do, and they don't necessarily care about the market, which is fine. But if you do want to make money, sometimes it's necessary to listen to what people actually need and want. A lot of artists, of course, create their own markets or create their own styles that are completely brand new. But I think that for me, I'm very practical. So I'll be like, if there's something that is selling and I can produce it, I'll go for it. So I just became an author. Just one day, decided to publish a book, and then I published a few more. And I really put my heart and soul into these. It wasn't an easy task. And now one of them was actually, I talked about it on my YouTube channel as well. It was picked up by a publishing house, and now I'm actually in the process of talking to a few other publishing houses. And so hopefully there will be good news in that field. So I really don't have that fear of putting myself out there. I actually think that one thing that I think the more business kind of people have is, or more entrepreneurial people have, is they're very proactive. And I think being proactive is really important. So a few months ago, I decided that I want to review some products on my YouTube channel, and get maybe even brand deals here and there. And not necessarily, I always have to be authentic to myself. So if I'm showing a product, I'm going to give it an honest review. And if I was paid for a review, the review is still going to be honest. If I don't feel like it can be honest, I won't do a paid promotion or something like this. But I will always mention if it was a promotion. At the moment, I wasn't really paid to do anything, but I did get quite a few products for free just to show them on the channel. And actually, this is how I got to play around with Schminke watercolors, which I love, are my top, no doubt, watercolor paints. So I decided, going back to, I just went a bit on a tangent. I decided that I want to get some products for free and review them. But I wasn't getting offers. People weren't contacting me. So I just decided to be proactive about it and just let all of those companies know, hey, my name is Liron, I have a YouTube channel. I'll be happy to show your products if you have a new product you're launching, or if you have something new that you want people to hear about. I have a really focused audience around watercolor painting and sketching, and quite a few got back to me, and this is Schminke and some others that I showed their products, and it was just really exciting. And the thing was that I was proactive. I literally emailed maybe, I don't know, like 50 or 60 companies. This is also how I got my book to be published by publishing houses, how I sold the language rights, Spanish language rights now, and in the future, hopefully other languages as well, by being proactive and reaching out myself. And this is actually a big part of the work. And this is the essence of what I wanted to talk about, and I kind of went in circles, is that I think there are a lot of qualities, personality qualities, that are kind of, they are present in people that are more artistic and in people that are more business oriented, and it's very different qualities. Just some of the things that I noticed. So one of those, like being proactive and putting yourself out there and reaching out to people that can help, to brands that can help, to different companies, to different people, even to other people. So I find that a lot of people have a hard time doing that, and I really want to encourage you. I think that I'm really in the process of building something big. I'm really in there. So if you're following me, you won't get a here's how to do it, ABC steps and like everything, and here I'm an expert. But what you will get is my perspective as someone who's going through this right now, which I think is fascinating, especially in a few years when I'll be in a different place and I'll feel like I made it even more. So what I can give you is definitely the advice of being very proactive. If you want to have collaborations with other people, don't expect them to contact you, especially on YouTube, where it's really popular to do collab videos. A lot of the times you have to reach out, and I reached out to many channels, not necessarily with the intent of, hey, let's make a collaboration, but more with the intent of, hey, I really like your stuff. I've been following you for a while. I learned a lot, and to open up the possibility for a relationship in the future. Okay, so I think this is really, really good approach. So let's get a bit focused here and move on to the practical segment, in which I just want to raise a few questions that I think are great to ask. So what I like to ask myself is, what do I want to happen? What do I want to sell? And what do I want people to remember me by when I'm gone? Okay? And then I try to think about, like, in terms of if I connect it to what we talked about in the business sense, what kind of business can I build that will lead to me being remembered for those things, that will put me in the position I want to be in. Okay? And for me, it's a lot of it is about just motivating people to create, and to create with great passion and courage. This is what I want, because for me it feels like this is something I had to work to get to, and I'm still, of course, struggling with it. It's a never-ending journey of becoming able to more freely connect to that vibe of pure creation, creativity, spontaneity, while being very controlled and deliberate, and basically getting the artistic results I want. And this doesn't necessarily mean, by the way, results on paper. It can also mean how you feel when you do it. Because sometimes you create, and I create, for example, and I feel amazing. And sometimes it feels like I have to kind of squeeze out the creation out of me. But when I feel amazing, it's just a crazy sensation that I really enjoy. So anyway, these are a few things, just, a few things to think about if it interests you. And this is it. What I want to do now is move on to the artist corner and present to you one artist that I really, really, really love. His name is Peter Schiller. And once again, it's all going to be in the show notes, so check it out. He's a fellow YouTuber. He has quite a big YouTube channel about watercolor, and what I love about his work is that it's so simple on one hand, but on the other hand, it's so smart. He combines pen and painting and watercolor painting in a very, very interesting way, I think, that leads to a result that's very unique, and it's very his style. You can tell immediately, and it also has some sense of realism, not like hyper realism or something like this. It's not even, I wouldn't even call it realism, because I don't think even the goal in most of his work is to be realistic, but the impression that's created is beautiful. That's what I think. And the reason why I love his stuff so much is that this was actually one of the first channels I learned from, which was great, because I just learned so much from his simplistic approach. And what I love about it is that it's really accessible for beginners. You can actually do what he does. He has a few tutorials that are super basic and really work on the fun aspects of watercolor and letting it flow together and wet and just enjoying the process. So I really enjoy his videos, and I urge you to check it out. And I'm really curious, because if I'm the kind of person that you can vibe with and really enjoy listening to, then we may also like the same artists. And this is what I think, this is the great potential of this artist corner, because in the next episode I'm going to talk about a video editor and a photographer. I'm going to talk about different people from very different artistic areas, and it could be interesting to see if we'll have a correlation between my taste and your taste. So anyway, let's wrap up this episode. I just want to remind you again. First, I want to thank you for listening, for tuning in. Hopefully, this podcast will improve as we go along. And as I learn what I enjoy talking about, I have a lot of other ideas for more podcast episodes. And really, I want you to feel free to share your thoughts with me. And if you have ideas that you think I should cover, if you have feedback, if you have topics that you want me to discuss, or maybe if you have any questions, you can email me. Everything is going to be in the show notes page. So be sure to check it out at lironyan, lironyan.com/EP2. That's short for episode 2. So EP2. Be sure to check it out, and everything's going to be there. Everything we talked about, some information about Peter Schiller, my email if you want to contact me, links to YouTube and Instagram, where I definitely urge you to check out my stuff. On Instagram is where it's easiest for me to connect with you. So if you want to send me DM, message there, or something like this, I can answer really quickly there. Okay, so I really hope you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, and I will see you again in the next one.